So, I mean, I think there's kind of two answers that I kind of draw on there, and then there's kind of why it matters to us in our practice. And I think a big part of why it matters is, being able to draw on the work of our peers, to be able to share work that we're doing, to draw on the work of others, to be part of collective endeavor online. These things strike me as just so essential to what teaching and learning can be. It seems almost nonsensical not to take advantage of it. If we accept that digital technology and the internet is not a fad, that it's not going to go away, I think we have an obligation to work with ourselves and our learners to ensure they have the technical skills to be fluent and confident and secure in how they practice what they do, but at the same time as well, be thoughtful about it and ethical. And then that, I think, goes to the final piece, which is why I think it really, really matters, is I think there, in many senses, some of the trends we're seeing with online communication are troubling. What we're seeing with how personal data is being traded as a marketing commodity online, and what this means to people's privacies, people's safety, what the internet's influence on public discourse is. I think it's safe to say it's problematic in 2018. So to what extent do we as educators and scholars and learners have an obligation to try to not only be passive recipients of this digital world, but to make an effort to shape it and to create spaces that are more human and more like the kind of places we want to be.
For me, the open web matters to education because primarily my background is in distance education, and I come to conversations about open from that background, which is really about access. So I care a lot about student access. I care a lot about marginalized communities' access to higher education, and non-traditional learners, for lack of a better word, and their access to higher education.
So I think the open web matters for social justice reasons, and I think that the open web has the potential to break down a lot of barriers of time and space across boundaries and borders in ways that other forms of open don't necessarily have. But I think even with these social justice intentions and purposes, a lot of times the web isn't equally accessible to all of us and not to those who are more vulnerable. And so I think we need to keep all of that in mind. I think there are a lot of ways in which people who normally wouldn't have a voice or wouldn't have the ability to participate in something are able to do so because of the web. But also, I think for whoever can use it for whatever purposes they can, I think it's always useful to find ways to use the open web when you can.
I think at this stage, if we don't do this kind of work to understand each other better, and here we have the digital tools to be able to do such a thing, it would be a kind of crime. So for me, the open web is critical to teaching and learning in the 21st century because we need to reach beyond ourselves and break down misunderstanding that lives in difference. Again, I'm an advocate for a theory called connected learning, which really is about discovering the connections that exist and also discovering shared purpose with students all over the world.
It matters for education because the web is how we interact with the world. Search is the way we live now. Google is by far the most dominant search engine in the world. 91% of searches are done through Google, and we need to sort of have our students and our staff be literate in how we interact with these digital intermediaries, what their role is and what our role is, so that we can actually participate and become knowledge activists, is how we frame it, in that students understand how knowledge is created, curated and disseminated online, and they can be part of that. And through editing in websites like Wikipedia, They can surface knowledge, bring their scholarship to bear in the top 10 search results. And we know that people are click on those search results at least sort of 90% of the time, with 42% clicking on that first choice alone.
The open web matters a great deal in education. We live in an increasingly open, networked, and participatory culture. So whether we are teaching in the discipline of law or engineering or nursing or social work or whatever it may be, we're helping students to develop in those disciplines and hopefully be professionals in those disciplines, but also citizens in this increasingly networked culture. So it's really important that we give students opportunities to develop their identities, their networks, their practices on the web, so that they can be active, engaged, and aware and wise practitioners, in open web spaces. So things like open educational practices, networked learning, and connected learning are vitally important.
Again, for that same reason that it offers potential, I think also very strongly that we need to be teaching people about the environment that exists outside of the classes that we go to. So, when someone goes out in the world to do the things of work or that interest them, they're not going to be necessarily doing it in the kind of classroom management tools that are pretty traditional. So I really want students that I interact with and teach and faculty I work with to sort of be able to use and educate people to take advantage and affordance of more or less the real world that's out there, and that's what the open web is.